Hey, what's up? This is Adam from Switchboard, and in this video I want to talk about responsive templates in Canvas and how you can use the pinning tools to pin or anchor certain elements within your design to the edges or to other elements so that everything appears where it should be when you view the template at different sizes. So I'm going to jump into that right now. So the first thing I'm going to add to the template is a text element. I can use the add text button here. I can press T. This will bring up a default text element with some garbage text in it. By default, these pin settings over here on the right hand side are set to 100 pixels and 100 pixels from the top and left of the template. You can see the dashed red line shows you how this element is currently being pinned. When we view this template at different resolutions, nothing really is happening other than the text element is staying that 100 pixel distance from the top and left. So I can change the distances here. I can just drag this around, but if I need to be more specific, I can put some hard-coded values in here. 50 by 50 keeps this edge a little narrower. Okay, what I'm going to do now is enable the pinning to the right hand edge of the template. If I turn this on, you'll see that now the text element is stretched over to the right hand side, and this pixel value here is set to 0, so we don't have any offset. If I change this to 50, the same as the other edges, now I get a 50 pixel offset from the right hand side, the same as we do from the top and left. And when I now preview this template in different sizes, you'll see that those distances are being maintained and the text is repositioning and resizing itself to fit into that text box. Now the text element is special in that by default text resizes to fit the contents of the box itself, the bounding box. But we can change that behavior by in two ways really. One is to say not to fill the box, but to use a hard-coded or specified font size, so we can do that. Or we can say fit the text box, but only up to a certain font size, something say, let's say 40 or 30. So this will always try and fit text to the text box, but up to a maximum font size. This is useful for cases where you might say want to put a quote in this text box. You know the maximum size that you might want that text to be, but because we're using the API to create these images, you want to specify the maximum size, and the text will fit accordingly within it without sort of overrunning. The next thing I want to demonstrate is some more settings on the pinning. What I've got here is an image that I've added. Again, by default, it's 100 pixels from the top and left. One of the most basic controls we have for pinning is to pin to the edges of the template. If I click this, what it does is enable the pinning to all four edges with 0 offset from the edges, so it basically just fills the template. If I want to add an offset, I can type in a value into each of these boxes. If I type a value into one, shift return, it applies the 20 pixel offset on all four edges. So I can use the pixel offset to sort of pinpoint exactly the right distance I might need in a given design. Another way we can pin to edges is by using this % control, and the percentage controls refer to the height and width of the template. So for example, currently the right hand side is pinned 20 pixels from the right hand edge. If I change this to 0, in order to remove any offset from the right hand edge, but set the percentage to say 50%, what that's doing is calculating 50% of the width of this template, and that becomes the offset position. So in other words, this is now going pretty much, well, it's actually going to half the width of this template. And I can also do that, say on the bottom edge, set this to 50% for this vertical axis. It's talking about the height. So we've got 50% of the width and 50% of the height. What I can do is also specify a pixel offset in addition to that percentage offset, just to further tweak this design to be exactly how I want it to be. So I can add another 20 pixels here on the right hand side. That reduces a little bit more. 20 pixels on the bottom edge, that reduces that a little bit more from the bottom. So it's looking at 50% of the width, and then a further 20 pixels, and then 50% of the height, and then a further 20 pixels. So using the percentage controls as well as the pixel controls, I can create sort of a column or grid design that scales and fits with any template size. I'll demonstrate that real quickly right now with the same image that I was just using a second ago. First of all, I will set this to 50 pixels on all sides, but on the right hand side, as I did a second ago, I'll reduce this to 25 and 50%. That puts the image over on the left hand column, and I'll duplicate this image, and then this time I'll remove the percentage on the right hand side, put that back to 50, and this time put it on the left edge. So now what I'm saying is pin the left edge of this image to 50% of the width plus an additional 25 pixels. That gives us a two column layout like this. If I preview this in different resolutions, it's the same logic is applied. 50% of the width plus a 25 pixel margin, and I can keep layering this up to produce a grid layout or a more complex column layout. The next thing I want to talk about is reference elements in the template designer, and that means you can make changes to one element based on another element that's in the same design. So I'll demonstrate this right now. What I've got is an image here and a text box. If I select the text box but then hover over this image, you can see a faint sort of blue dashed border appears around it, and that means it's a reference element to the text box. And I can use keystrokes at this point as I'm hovering over to make changes to the text box based on the image. So if I hover over the image and I press W, that means the tops of the two elements will be aligned. If I press S, it will align to the bottom, and the same applies with the keys A and D. So if I've got the text box selected, hover over the image as a reference element, I press A, that will align the left hand side, press D will align the right hand side. So they're not really linked, it's just a way of saying, well, I want this element to be similar to another element, and those keystrokes help you position things a little bit more conveniently. Another thing you can do with the keystrokes is make a selected element the same size as a reference element, and I just do that using the shift key. So again, text box is selected, I hover over the image. If I do shift W now, my text element becomes the same size or the same height as the image, and if I do shift and A, it becomes the same width. So this allows me to quickly sort of align things to be the same size, different elements to be the same size and the same positions as things that are already on your template. Another useful feature of the template designer is the ability to pin one element to another sort of permanently, so that when one changes, the other follows. So I want to demonstrate that with two elements in this design. I've got one image here at the top of the design. I'm going to add a text element. These are not linked in any way currently, but what I can do is say that, well, I always want the text element here to be the same width as the image, regardless of the size of the image that I create with Canvas, or if I change the size of the image in the future, I want the text box to be aligned to stay that same width. So I can do that by first selecting the text box And then if I look at the pin settings, where this is currently selected to the edge of the template, I can drop this down and choose an element, a different element from the template. So this image is called image 1. If I select image 1 and I say left, and I change this offset to 0, now the text element's left edge is tied to the image's left edge, and always will be. If I do the same on the right hand side, choose image 1, align to the right hand side, 0 pixels. Now the right hand edge is aligned to the image's right hand edge. So now if I resize the image, the text box resizes. If I move the image, the left and right stay in alignment. So now this means I can go ahead and take this image and maybe now pin this to the template itself, left edge there to 50, the right edge to 50. Now my text box again is the left and right edges are set to 50. Now when I resize this or preview in a different resolution, the text box again is just following the left and right edges of the image. And you can do that on both axes, and combined with the text settings that you can make within a text element, you can get some pretty creative layouts for different designs, knowing that they are fully responsive when images are created at different resolutions. The last thing I want to cover is what happens when one text element references another, and I'm going to demonstrate that with a headline and a sub or a heading and a subheading use case. So what I've done is add a text element here. I'm going to replace this text with this is a heading, and I'm going to pin this to all edges so that it fills the template. Then I'm going to add another text element. I'm going to replace the text to this is a sub heading. Now in this one I'm going to limit the font size. Let's limit this to 50 at the most. And I'm going to pin the left and right edges with no offset, so they go to the right and left edges. And I'm just going to resize this vertically so that it just sort of fills the space just by eye. So I want this subheading to appear below this heading. So I'm going to pin the top to text 1, which is the heading. I'm actually going to rename this to heading so it's a little bit more obvious. Select the subheading. I'm going to pin the top of my subheading to the bottom of the main heading, and an offset of say 10 pixels. So now there's a 10 pixel gap between these two elements. Now that 10 pixel gap stays in place regardless of the text. Obviously when we call Canvas using the API, we can replace any text element with any text. So we always want the subheading to appear 10 pixels, in this case 10 pixels from the bottom of the text that we add. So if I replace this altogether with something else completely, we can see that it maintains the 10 pixel offset regardless of the text that is being referenced. So that's how text elements work when one references the other, and that only really works with text because text is dynamic and based on some of the properties that you've got with fonts and things like that. You want your text elements to be offset as accurately as possible. This wouldn't really work if this subheading was being positioned based on the bounding box, because that's a different size. The text fits within the text element according to the properties that you specify. Well, I hope you found that useful. It's possible to use Canvas and the template designer to produce some pretty creative layouts using the pinning controls. There is a video tutorial I did where I make a tennis match result image based on a design I kind of stole from the US Open, and that uses extensive pinning controls in it. So check that out if you want to find out more and see a more pertinent use case of pinned elements. But in any case, I thank you for your time, and I will see you on the next one.